Welcome back to Chris and Retro. Tonight's video, third time trying to record this tonight. I don't know what's going on with me. I guess I got a little rusty here, the couple days off. But I'm going to talk about clarity and some of the rewards around clarity, as well as fighting risk. And this is born out of some recent travel that I've done. I've been traveling pretty extensively. I've been down in the DC area for about a week. And then over the weekend, I was over in Houston, all for work. And, I was really, those situations for me in the past have been battlegrounds. But at this point, they aren't. And so what I'm hoping tonight on the video tonight is give you a little bit of context of why that's a battleground. At the same time, hopefully offer some things that I've learned that are actually brand new. I don't know if they're brand new lessons or validation of things that I knew to be true, and they manifest themselves the last few weeks. So I hope this is an encouraging video for you tonight. Sometimes I get on here and talk about some real dark stuff, but this was I don't know, pretty encouraging to me. So I wanted to share that with my audience, and hopefully, you get something out of this that's beneficial. I'm going to start with a piece. I just want to make sure I draw back to my website, chrisandretro.com. And I talk a lot about on here. I've mentioned, not a lot, but I've mentioned a fair amount about my blog, iBlock Chronicles. And in that blog, I have an article here called The Place of My Origin. I wrote it in October of 2021. And in here is a pretty extensive article. If you get a chance to read it, you'll find some very emotional writing that I had. And I literally wrote this on the front seat of an airplane. And my first travel back at all extensively. And so I want to share with you. So this is Chris and Retro, iBlock Chronicles, Place of My Origin. Take a look at it if you get a chance. This article was born out of the fact that I'm a national ambassador for Shatterproof, which I've talked to you about before. It's a volunteer role. And I had been asked to represent them in a panel discussion on stigma in the emergency department. And this was going to be hosted in Dallas, Texas, before the American College of Emergency Physicians. There was 3 of us ambassadors on the panel. And I was looking forward to it. It was the first time I'd done kind of a national gig for Shatterproof, and it was, kind of exciting. And the following spring, I was going to be presenting before South by Southwest. And, that was something that prior to that I had presented at South by Southwest, forget it. But anyway, so there was a string of things that were happening all together that were putting me on more of a stage so that I could present my story. And it was getting pretty exciting. Well, this is the first time I actually traveled for it, to do a deal like this. And so I presented before this stigma group, and getting on the airplane, I was faced with the travel thing. And I didn't, up to that point, I probably always looked at mental health and those types of things were really the real driver. And they were my addiction and the partying around it and how that got out of hand. And I've even professed that on the show. But one of the things that was also a problem for me is that entitled drinking that happens with business. So you get on the airplane, you go to the airport, there's alcohol. Get off the plane, there's dinners with alcohol. You go to an event, there's alcohol. You sit in your hotel board, there's alcohol. You sit in your hotel board, you go out and drink alcohol. You go back on the airplane, you drink at the airport. It's just this ongoing option for alcohol. And I called this article The Place of My Origin, because as I was sitting on the front seat of that airplane to Dallas, Texas, and getting ready for my first leg of the flight, it just washed over me that this was a real important trip for me, because I was going to be facing for the very first time these airports, that scenario, that unaccountable situation. Even though I was going to present on addiction or some portion of addiction, I was still being faced with that travel component that had no accountability, and it was pretty powerful for me. So in that seat, I literally pulled out my notebook and just started scratching down the place of my origin, and that's where this came from. Well, in there, I really came across some information that was out of my mind that really called out, the danger for me on the road. The last several weeks here, I've been traveling quite a bit, and I've been faced with a lot of those dangers again. So in my DC travel, it was a sales meeting, and I was around some people that know my story. So there's a lot of accountability there. But over the weekend, I was in Houston, Texas, and I was with only one other person from my organization. And it was in large part unsupervised on my own, going through all those airports with multiple connections and evenings alone and in a warm environment, with a light festival across the street, or some kind of a light festival. I'm not sure what it was, but there was a party experience going on outside my hotel. I was in a nice hotel, had some cash I could have spent. I had really the perfect opportunity to not be known and drink. And I didn't. And I didn't really have the desire to. And so I want to share some of those things with you. But the week prior to that was a real clear point, and to bring to the point. So the second part is going to really talk about risk mitigation, how we deal with risk. But the first part was really the rewards of not doing this at all. So I talked about how I had some accountability at the work environment. And this company has seen me, present and do some things, but this is the first time I was going to be really presenting in front of everybody in a significant way. As I've gotten my swagger back, as I'm back in a professional setting for this now the third year with this organization, I'm really getting to a place now where some of my skill sets and my energy and my understanding of the company allow those skills that I've had in the past to come out and present in a dynamic way. Those things are not happening if I'm drinking at all, and I can assure you of that. I noticed that when I travel now, I'm clear in the morning. I'm not fuzzy headed at all. A little tell for me that I would never have done before. I never took stuff out of my suitcase. I just get the stuff out of the suitcase. I had to wear it, iron it, put it on, and go about my business. But I always lived out of the suitcase. Now, when I travel, even if it's for a night, I take stuff out. I put stuff in the drawers. I put everything neatly in the drawers. I put my shirts and everything else, and I have my outfits all set up for the week. So I'm on point. I'm there. It's game day for me, and I treat it all like game day and not just a casual do some business and go home thing. That clarity is tremendously rewarding, because then when I go and actually have to perform on my job, I'm on point. It's well rehearsed. My thoughts are there. I'm getting the feedback to say, wow, that was good. Those are all things not to pat myself on the back, other than to say one of the rewards from my non-drinking was that moment and those moments that ultimately propel my career and give me the sense of, okay, I'm doing something with this thing. They're accomplishment, they're milestones. And so for me, that was pretty powerful. I'm drawn back. I did a show for 3 seasons called 100 Proof Living, and it ultimately turned into a corporation that timing wise was just off. But a friend of mine, Brian, and I did a show called Conversation with a Cop and a Criminal. That was 100 Proof Living, the show. And on there, we, really talked a lot about some certain subjects with recovery, but it turned into 100 Proof Living, the company, because that company was tasked with going out and letting companies understand the dangers and risks of business and professional drinking or binge drinking. We looked at CDC stats that says binge drinking is defined by 6 drinks or more in a setting. So binge drinking in and of itself doubles healthcare costs for an organization. It significantly reduced productivity. And we did a whole animation on the whole thing and that type of thing. And at some point, I'll probably show that to you on the show or share it through the platforms. But the point is that even as a non-alcoholic, you drinking heavily on these road trips definitely impacts performance. And I could tell that if I could extract from my mind and from my heart and lay that over my performance over the last several weeks and my sober living and share that with you, you would say, oh, wow, I see the difference. If I shared it, go back to 2015 or so, 14 or 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there, and you saw my performance there versus what you see now, you'd be like, wow, I do see the difference in terms of performance and just my look and, whether I'm hungover, all that stuff is gone. But even if you're a non-drinker and you go to heavily, if any of you have been to national meetings or sales meetings or anything like that, you know what it's like. There's a lot of drinking, and many days you're not feeling your best. And one of the rewards for me is just the clarity, and generally overall in my life right now, I've got a pretty good clarity on everything that's going on. And there's a lot going on with my personal life. There's a lot going on with Sam and some of the struggles that we're having there and some of the rewards and wins that we're having because we're both dedicated to getting beyond our stage that we're in. That collaboration is huge, and there's rewards in that. But there's also rewards in staying on top of everything. And so that reward of clarity and sobriety is pretty powerful, honestly. And I even was just talking to fellow traveler last night about this. But it comes with a little bit of a fight. And so for me, in the context of traveling for business, and if you travel for business or if you have unaccountable moments in your life where it's easy to just go do the things that are causing you problems, there's a couple things that I've learned and helped me. So one trigger I have, honestly, is if it's a warm summer night. I mean, what's better cause for celebration? Another one is unaccountability of being out of town. I'm in Houston, Texas, man. That's a long way away from Rochester. Weather was nice. The warm weather was nice. There's a celebration activity. All the construct was there for why shouldn't I go do that? I mean, I've earned it. There's a lot going on. Why not let your hair loose? Let the hair down a little bit. Well, I didn't, and I'm glad I didn't, and I wasn't even tempted to. But the reason I wasn't tempted to is because I also know what road trips can be for me. And before I even got there, and before I even knew it was a nice night, before I even knew about a festival, before I even knew that there was a possibility for me to have unaccountable evening alone, I had already gone ahead and had some mitigation put in place for that. So I didn't trust myself to wait till I got there to stop. So that would be tip number one, is prepare yourself before you get there. You know, you talk to teenagers. I don't know if you've ever had this conversation with a teenager coming up through, but some teenagers are a little bit horny. And if they get in a room, especially boys, you get them in a room with a girl, or a girl gets in a room with a guy, and you get to a point where you are alone and having those feelings already, it's too late. It's too late. If you don't do anything ahead of time, it's too late. You can't wait till the point of, something's going to happen and expect it to stop. So same thing with drinking, same thing with drug use or anything else like this. Same thing with infidelity in marriage. If you are on these road trips and you're causing yourselves to put yourself in a risky situation, I would argue it's not even just staying away from the circumstance. It's what you decide before you even get on the plane about that trip, or what you decide weeks before about who you're going to be as a person. I think that a few things that are really important is give yourself the accountability of a declaration. One of the reasons why I'm not anonymous about my substance use and why I talk on this show as candidly as I do is because you provide accountability to me that actually within me would bother me to violate that. And so I publicly profess on LinkedIn, people tell you not to do that. I don't want to be known as an alcoholic. I don't necessarily want to be known as a person in recovery. I just want to be known as Chris, who happens to be an alcoholic, who happens to be a person in recovery, who also happens to be a high-performing sales professional, who also happens to have a YouTube channel called Chris in Retro that's not huge in subscribers, but an awful lot of fun to do. These are things that I declare. So I'm not allowing myself that hiding place right out of the gate. Fortify against weak moments. And, as I talked about the teenage example, but some of the other ways to fortify against weak moments is recognizing that you will have them. None of us are bulletproof on this stuff. There's a lot, you take the marriage infidelity thing. There's a lot of attractive people out there that you could participate, that are willing people to participate in awful moments that will violate your partner if you put yourself in those situations. Your sleeping arrangements, where you allow yourself to be, small conversations of flirtatiousness that can lead to moments that build on that original conversation, maybe many weeks or months down the road. Don't think for 1 minute that a conversation 6 months ago won't string together to a sales meeting 6 months later to an event that destroys a relationship, or an event that ruins your reputation and that of somebody else. These things string together. These sins, so to speak, string together. So your fortification is really in every small moment, the conversations you have with another, the faithfulness you choose to be. I know for Sam, the thing is I've always tried to be is for myself faithful. I wanted to always declare that. And that's something that's important. I think it's important for others to do that. Now, on this trip and other things, I thought this was part of the conversation I alluded to around this fellow traveler conversation I had last night is, it's not enough to just have a thought and say, and not do anything about that thought. For that thought to develop into a tool that then becomes something that fortifies you more, you really have to seize those small thoughts, walk away from them. Don't let them chew. Don't let them take root. So if I have a thought about, man, it'd be nice to go out and have a drink in the warm weather. Nope. You got to grab it and get rid of it, because I promise you, for me, this alcoholic, if I let that sit, it might not be this trip. It might not even be that night, maybe the next night, or maybe a week down the road or whatever. If I don't constantly put that thing aside, I know it'll wait for me to build on it. I know it's just waiting for the water to nurture it. I know that. I know those thoughts. It's always waiting. You hear about people in 12-step groups talk about their addiction is waiting in the parking lot, doing push-ups to get them. The fact of the matter is mine is literally a dog sitting in the corner with blood still in its teeth. I can still see how that thing bit me, and it's literally sitting here right now waiting for me to screw up. Not literally a dog, but if there was a dog there with blood in its teeth, my blood, I probably wouldn't be in this freaking room. But you know what I'm saying? The addiction itself is not out in the parking lot. It's literally right here alongside of me, waiting for me to mess up. And a lot of times that's in these small moments and small thoughts. A big one that's become way too cliche is this idea of tapes, the tape we play. So my tape's super short when I'm vulnerable. So I can say, okay, this drink will be nice, or this moment would be nice. And in that moment, it's probably nice for a little while. But when I get up the next morning, it's just awful to think about. I've learned that if I look at a situation as something I want to participate in, knowing full well that that participation in the past, around 97% of the time, has caused me problems in some way or another, some bigger, some smaller. I can play that tape forward. I realize that those small moments never really existed in the first place. They're only good for me for the first 2 drinks that I drink super fast. I'm about 2 hours into everything being probably okay, except for the fact I was drinking, to it becoming a real problem in one way or another. I'm either fighting or screwing around or doing something stupid, all because of alcohol. So I seize those moments and understand that that initial thought is really where it starts for me. And it could be maybe I capture this thought and don't do anything on it. But if I don't build the tools around that thought really is just the starting point of somewhere down the road it biting me. I have to fortify that thought now so that that goes away. And I've developed a tool so that when the thought comes again, it's not as much work for me to get rid of it because I know it's danger. It's not the drink. It was the thought that's my most dangerous moment. You know, this Houston trip was a real threat for me, honestly, based on my history. It was a real threat. You got beautiful women, warm weather, a party environment, all that place away from home, some resources I could use to go out and enjoy all those things. Extra time the next morning that I could have stayed in all day because, I mean, the event that was really not as there wasn't as much volume in the event as I thought. So a couple of the steps I took was, one, get on the phone with somebody that is a fellow traveler. I stayed in the room after certain hours. I had a preacher of a church I used to go to as a kid that said that many of life's bad things would go away if people just go to bed by 10 o'clock every night. And there's a lot of truth to that. But you know, it's true. And my addiction is if I stay in the hotel room after a certain hour, I'm good. I go to dinner, I go back. Making sure I'm not thinking of things that could progress into other things, and also focusing on the good and the declarations that I made, and reminding myself of the rewards of my behavior that is aligned with what I say I'm going to be. It's just great walking through my house, taking my suitcase and parking it by the wash machine, and knowing full well that the Chris that left is the same Chris that came home to his family. I love that. There has been no drink and no party that feels better than being the same Chris that walked out the door as the one that came home, and no substance in me. It feels phenomenal. And so with that comes clarity, higher performance, comes self-reflection and growth, tools being built. All these things happen when you have these victories. So it's not so much that we always have to take our life and make it just a big drudgery because we can't drink or we can't be with, people that we're sexually attracted to or all this stuff. It doesn't have to always be that fight. There's tremendous rewards in the clarity and the good living that comes from moving beyond those thoughts. And even as desperate of an alcoholic as I am, and as rigorous as I have to be about my recovery, I can do it. You can do it too. You know, we have capabilities that are beyond the norm when we fight through this stuff. You know, Sam and I just got tattoos recently. Mine says Anomaly. I don't know if you can see that. It's another one. It's just a very basic tattoo. I did it like a definition, the anomaly, enunciation, and she did Prodigy. It's just kind of a thing that we've had since we first got together. You know, she's built for more than what she's performing, and people don't always see that. And me, I see myself, and others have said it, a little different. I'm not the norm, but I think you're the same way. You probably are not the norm, and so we just need to embrace that. We don't need to be cookie cutter people. We also have to recognize our weaknesses and the dangers that can cause us real problems. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I mean, it's been a real reward for me in my recovery season. These last few weeks, just one more time, fortifying, man, I'm on the right path here, because what it feels like on the other side is nothing short of miraculous, for one, but also there's nothing that could have happened any other scenario that would have been more rewarding. And in fact, probably would have left me with a lot of looking over my shoulder. If you recall, I've said in here, I find hope in never looking over my shoulder again. Gone through seasons where I felt like I was looking over my shoulder again. I like not. It makes a big difference in my performance, and other people see it too. And that feedback comes and it just bolsters the journey so I can do it more. And now I have more tools, even after a couple weeks of travel, than I had going into it. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, comment, share this video if you got people that you know that struggle with road trips. I mean, maybe they're not addicts. Maybe they just are a hot freaking mess when they go out on these trips away from home and have caused themselves some headaches. You know, there's life beyond it, and there's tools you can develop. If you've made a mistake, get back on the horse and get going again. Figure out what you did wrong and figure out what you can do preventatively. Remember, it might have been a thought the last trip you're on the road that caused you to have the problem you're doing on this one. I'm really thankful for this show. I'm thankful for the accountability you provide, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to share some lessons that I've learned. This weekend on Sunday night, I think, yeah, Sunday night, I will be on the Preacher's Corner podcast YouTube channel. I've had Preacher on this show before, Antoine, and he's got me on his show now coming up. It's a longer podcast, but it's a brand new show. I think he's doing a nice job over there, and going to see, where it goes. It's going to be a pretty casual conversation, but I'm looking forward to that. We also, because of my travel, we're not able to do a signature moment with Sam on Sunday. So we'll be doing that tomorrow night. So look for that to drop Tuesday night, tomorrow night. And but between now and then, I'm going to do every single thing I can do to stay out of trouble. And man, I hope you do too.